Hey everybody, this is Troy over at Uncomfortable Truths. Thanks for checking me out. So today we're going to be watching Jelly Roll, who is a rapper and hip hop artist who also he does a lot of country music. I'm kind of a fan of this guy, which is how I heard about him anyway. I urge you to check out his music. But more recently, he spoke at the Senate hearing talking about fentanyl and the need to actually cut down and stop the drug trade to start saving lives on this issue. He is a former drug dealer. He has done some time. He's really turned his life around since then, obviously. But I thought his testimony was really powerful, and I kind of wanted to get into a little bit. So, anyway, that's enough for me. We'll just watch him for a minute and see what he has to say about things.
And I also understand the paradox of my history as a drug dealer standing in front of this committee. But equally, I think that's what makes me perfect to talk about this. I was a part of the problem. I am here now standing as a man that wants to be a part of the solution. I brought my community down. I hurt people. I was the uneducated man in the kitchen playing chemist with drugs I knew absolutely nothing about, just like these drug dealers are doing right now when they're mixing every drug on the market with fentanyl, and they're killing the people we love.
So, I just want to stop there for a second because I think he makes a really fantastic point that sometimes like these things get kind of lost in the weeds a little bit as far as what people actually think about like drug dealers. At the end of the day, they are literally mixing up all of these chemicals with fentanyl is why we're seeing these huge and dramatic increases in death, which is extremely sad. And he talks a little bit more about this in the beginning of the video. It will be in the description. I urge you to go ahead and watch the whole thing if you have time. But I did just want to make sure that like we got that point out that yeah, this is like a real crisis and it needs to be addressed.
I'll be honest with y'all, my desire is to only get older and only do better and be better. I believed when I sold drugs genuinely that selling drugs was a victimless crime. I truly believe that, y'all. My father always told me what doesn't get you in the wash will get you in the rinse. Now I have a 15-year-old daughter whose mother is a drug addict. Every day I get to look in the eyes of a victim in my household of the effects of drugs every single day. And every single day I have to wonder, me and my wife, if today will be the day that I have to tell my daughter that her mother became a part of the national statistic. History repeats itself, gentlemen. Even in the 1990s, crack cocaine had long made its way into my middle lower class neighborhood. And at that moment, even as a teenager, you could have never convinced me in that moment that there would be a far bigger problem on the horizon in the form of a pharmaceutical drug. And then I watched opioids and Oxycontin burst onto the scene. I'm here to tell y'all that fentanyl is going to make the Sackler family look like
stopping there for just a second. That is insane. Like to think about, okay, we went from crack cocaine to the opioids and now fentanyl. And literally like nothing has been done to really stop this from occurring. Well, what's the next thing going to be if we don't actually stop like fentanyl? Like, do we want to keep making things worse or should we actually take steps, which is why he's here trying to get the FEND Off Fentanyl to actually target people that are trafficking these deadly opioids. Now, I know it isn't fun for a lot of people to say we're going after criminals, but you have to go after criminals. Like, it's not acceptable for these drugs to keep getting into our citizen system and kill them. Like, this is something that is a little bit personal, with me as well. Like, my parents were both drug addicts. Like, my father, as far as I know, is homeless, from largely his decision to use these drugs. So it's not just the people that are dying. It's also like, imagine being, his daughter every day, knowing that your mom's addicted to drugs. I mean, this is a real society problem that actually needs to be dealt with. So I think taking steps to actually stop the flow of fentanyl into our country is something that needs to be taken extremely seriously. So if you have drug traffickers coming from across the border, if you have these drugs coming in, then we need to deal with it. We need to deal with it in a pretty harsh manner.
And I want to let y'all sit with that for a second. It is time for us to be proactive and not reactive. We were reactive with crack. We were reactive with opioids. And y'all are taking the first step at somebody in Senate finally being proactive. I truly believe in my heart that this bill, that this bill will stop the supply and can help stop the supply of fentanyl. But in part of being proactive, gentlemen and women and ladies, I have to be frank and tell y'all that if we don't talk to the other side of Capitol Hill and stop the demand, we are going to spin our tires in the mud. Y'all are taking the first step, but I encourage you to take it outside of this room and you take it to your colleagues and your constituents and you give them the most that you can.
All right, we're going to leave it off there for a second. But I just want to point out that he also really closes on an important point. Like, why is the demand so high? Like, some people on one side of the aisle want to deal with only one side of the problem, which is, crime. And I 100% agree with that. Selling drugs is a crime and it should be dealt with in a pretty harsh manner, especially when you're actually risking somebody's life, with the product that you're selling them. But on the same side of that, there does need to be somebody addressing the fact, like, why is it that Americans feel the need to do drugs like so much? Like, why are we such a population that does, drugs at such a high rate? Now, I would argue that a lot of this does come down to some personal accountability. I know it's not something that is really looked upon favorably, but you do occasionally have to say, hey, look, you are making these decisions yourself. And so if you decide to keep doing this, you are going to be punished for it. At the same time, I do think that we need to ask ourselves, like, hey, why do we have so many people that are seeking out drugs? Is it because we no longer engage in our families as much? Is it because we're spending too much time online? Like, these are also some real problems, because I do think that we seem way more disconnected than we ever should be. We should be around people like in person sometimes, not just live our entire lives online. We need to have like families, and that's something that we shouldn't shy away from. I know it's become very in vogue, I guess, to say that, well, having a family is something that maybe you'll do it or maybe you'll just chase your career. I think that's an absolutely horrible decision. Everybody really should strive to have, a great family life and actually to have a family. That's something that's fundamental to what humans want, what they need, and really what's going to make us happy long term. So I would argue that one of the main reasons why people are kind of going towards these drugs is because we're seeing a social breakdown and there isn't this need to have a family. So we're not living as fulfilled lives. But anyway, everybody, I thought that his testimony was really fantastic. I urge everybody to check out the full video. I'll have the link in the description. But go ahead, hit like and subscribe. It helps the show out a lot. And I appreciate the heck out of all of you. Take care, everybody.